Welcome to the Raising Confident Girls podcast, your guide to raising strong, confident daughters. I'm Melissa Jones, the founder of Girls Positivity Club and a teacher for over 20 years. In a world where girls often feel overwhelmed, anxious, and confused, this podcast is your go-to space. As caregivers, we navigate challenges together. I founded Girls Positivity Club to provide a place where you belong and get the tools to face today's hurdles. Consider this your regular check-in with a trusted friend, offering insights and practical tips for meaningful conversations. I'm here to help you feel confident on this journey of raising a generation of empowered girls. Let's dive in and raise those confident girls together. Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Raising Confident Girls. I am Melissa, and I'm so happy to be with you again this week. I want to start with a moment that tends to stop parents in their tracks. Your daughter might say something like, "She's way prettier than me. I'm not as good as her. Everyone else is better at this." And the instinct comes fast. You want to fix it. You want to shut down that thought. You want to protect her from it. So you say, "That's not true. You're amazing just the way you are. Don't compare yourself." And instead of feeling better, she pulls back. Now, I always want to say, it's not terrible if you've said those things. I've said those things too. And we mean well when we say comments like that. But what can happen sometimes when we say that is she goes quiet or she doubles down. And you're left thinking, why didn't that help? I was trying to build her up. And when I'm talking about doubling down, she might continue to kind of argue with you about why she's not as pretty, not as good, not as fill in the blank. And if comparison has been showing up at your house lately, whether quietly or out loud, and sometimes this can even happen with siblings too, I want you to know this right away. Comparison isn't a confidence failure. It's a developmental signal. And how we respond to it matters far more than whether we can talk her out of it. So today, we're going to talk about why comparison shows up so strongly in girls, what she's actually asking for in those moments, and how to respond in ways that reduce comparison instead of driving it underground. So here's the part that often surprises parents. And I was a girl. And I've seen so many girls in my teaching career and Girls Positivity Club who compare constantly. And when a girl compares herself, she's not usually fishing for reassurance or fishing for a compliment. She's trying to understand where she fits. So comparison is how girls measure belonging, check safety, and figure out identity, especially for girls who are thoughtful, observant, or just aware socially. So when she says, "I'm not as good as her or him," what she often means is, do I still belong? Am I okay here? Is there room for me too? That's why dismissing comparison, even lovingly, doesn't land. Because the question underneath hasn't been answered yet. And most parents respond to comparison by trying to counter that thought. We reassure them, we correct, we redirect. And again, that makes sense. We don't want her to believe something painful. But here's the catch. When reassurance comes too fast, a girl hears, "You shouldn't feel this way." Not because that's what you said, but because the feeling didn't get space to exist. So instead of calming her, reassurance can make her feel misunderstood, unseen, or quietly alone with that thought. And that's when comparison gets louder internally, even if she stops saying it out loud. And comparison can show up in lots of different ways. And like I said, I saw this in school with academics. And this would happen at all ages. So it could be that she is good at one thing, and then she sees that someone else is better at it than her. And it's not that she doesn't want that person to be better, but she starts to doubt herself. So that's one example, and that can come in many forms, especially if they used to be really good at something or used to feel like something came more easily, and now they have to work at it. So, for example, I talked with a girl a few days ago who's in high school, and she was saying that she didn't do well on a test, on a math test. And it kind of shook her because math is her thing. Like, she's really good at math. Math comes pretty easily to her. And she got like a 92 instead of a 98 or something. And she was like, everyone else in the class didn't do well either, except this one other girl. And she got a 98. And she was comparing herself then to the 98%, because then she saw that it was possible, but she then was trying to justify it and trying to figure out why. And she was going to talk to the teacher and find out if there was anything she could do to make it up or this or that. And she's like, my grade lowered. And she's a very high achieving girl, and she knows that she doesn't have to be perfect, but she also compares herself to other kids in class who get better grades, or it comes more easily to, or whatever the case would be. And this also comes in sports when there are girls that are at a similar level, and then maybe one has a breakout skill that she learns how to do before your daughter, or maybe it's in a dance class or gymnastics class or an art class. I see this in summer camp where in an art project, they look over at other girls to see how theirs measures up. And we're very intentional in our camps and clubs about talking about how everybody can express themselves in different ways, and how you do something is uniquely you, and all of those things, but it still happens. And it really is more about belonging and not insecurity necessarily. And when we can believe that, and we can start to understand that, which, because I know it sounds kind of counterintuitive, your response shifts. So you stop trying to erase the thought and be like, don't compare yourself. That's not helping you. And so then it's kind of dismissive, and you start helping her feel grounded inside herself. And that's where we go next. And one of the things that I often say in Girls Positivity Club, and I said this as a teacher of over 23 years, is it's you against you. And it's natural for you to look over at someone else's paper, so to speak, not cheating, but like compare yourself and see where you're measuring up. But what's more helpful is understanding too that there's room for everybody. And that doesn't mean they can never feel competition or whatever, but also, especially with girls, there can be this competition of, it's almost like a scarcity of there's not enough to go around, or there's not enough people can be good at a certain thing or prettier or whatever the case would be. And so it's helping them feel good inside of who they are, and it's giving them good tools that they can do to kind of get them out of that comparison loop without just ignoring it or giving them just a kind of a dismissive statement. And so what helps and what can make it worse? When a girl compares herself, the feeling is already there. Trying to argue it away or prove that it's not true does not remove it. It isolates her in it. And so what this can look like by different age levels is, at the younger ages, she might say something like, she's better than me. What helps is, that's really hard to feel like that. Not, that's not true. And then just kind of trying to convince her that it's not true, because maybe the girl is better at it. Maybe she's had more experience. Maybe she has been working at it over and over again, and she finally got something. And it's okay also for us to say to our girls that every person is not going to be equally as good at every single thing, and that is not a flaw about her. At that older age, in the tweens, comparison often feels sharper and more personal, especially because belonging is so strong as they're getting older and trying to find their places where they belong, and they don't often like the spotlight or like to feel like something's babyish or whatever. They're trying to figure out how to still be a kid and still start to develop that independence too. So it can feel sharper. And so what can help her is you saying something like, I can feel how discouraged you feel. Not, you shouldn't think like that. And it's us empathizing with them and just telling them, like, I hear how discouraging that can be, and just helping them feel heard and seen. At the teen age, comparison can feel tied to identity. So in the case with the girl with the math score, her identity was starting to shift in that comparison where she was starting to think, I'm not good at math anymore. And that becomes more of an identity shift. What helps is, that feels really hard, or that test seemed like it was really hard. I get why that's really bothering you. And standing next to her, to that feeling, helps her feel like she doesn't have to hide how she's feeling to stay connected. The second thing that you can do is shift from better or worse to different. Comparison often traps girls in a ranking system, and this is something that I did growing up constantly. And let me tell you, it did not help me feel more secure. It didn't help me in any way. All it did was make me feel more internally down about myself, and I didn't have the skill at that time to know what to do. And so my mom didn't either. She didn't really know how to help me. And so that's what my goal is always in these episodes, is to help you with that. Because girls often feel like someone has to be on top and someone has to be behind. And your job isn't to move her up the ladder. It's to step out of the ladder. This can sound like you and she aren't the same kind of good. Like, they can both be good and they're not the same kind of good. For younger girls, it could sound like people are good at different things. Now, that doesn't mean that you're not saying that she can never be good at it, and you can also tell her that. But saying things like this really helps start that conversation. And for tweens, it's being different doesn't mean less. And for teens, it can sound like comparison can make you feel really flat, and you're more complex than that. Or it can make you feel really like only one way, and you have more that you're good at, or you have more going for you, or something like that. Like, it's not just this one thing that you measure your value on. This kind of thinking, and you can word those however you want. Some of them aren't going to connect with your daughter, and you can say it in your own voice, but this helps her widen the lens without dismissing the feeling. And, I used to hate it when my parents would say, like, it's just normal to feel like that. And I was like, no, I don't want to be normal. I don't want to be average. I want to be as good, or whatever it is. And so it's also letting them know that everybody, grows at their own pace, or it's okay if, in the case with the girl with the grades, or in the art situation, it's okay if hers looks neater or more realistic. Yours is still good. It's different. It's unique in this way. It's telling your story. And so that kind of talk with her is not dismissing how she's feeling, because you are acknowledging it, but it's also pointing out that her difference is what makes it equally good or equally unique. And everybody doesn't have to be the exact same, or there doesn't have to be a ranking of who's better, who's worse, and all that. And I know that you might be thinking, like, well, people are always going to compare themselves to something. And so that is true. And this is something that's human nature, but it's really looking at you against you, and how important that is to teach our girls at a young age of, I just want to get a little bit better than I was yesterday in some way. So the next thing you can do is help her name what she's actually longing for. Under comparison, there's usually some kind of a wanting to belong. That was my biggest thing. I just wanted to belong, and I didn't know why I wasn't belonging. Wanting to be chosen, wanting to be made a big deal of on the team, in the activity, in the class, whatever that would be, wanting to feel competent, wanting to feel like secure in what she's doing. Instead of focusing on comparison, you can try asking her, what do you wish felt easier right now? And that'll give you some insight. That question shifts from judgment to curiosity. It helps her feel understood, and it gives you insight without pressure. Often she'll say something like, I just want to feel confident. I want friends like that. I want to feel noticed. And there's nothing wrong with feeling any of those things. Now you're responding to the real need, not the surface thought. And the next thing that you can do is just model a different way to relate to comparison. So girls are watching how adults handle comparison too. They notice how you talk about your body. They notice how you talk about other parents, how you talk about yourself. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be honest. And one of the things that my mom would say that really bothered me, and I love my mom so much, but would be when she put herself down. And she wasn't used to feeling good about certain parts of her. Like she'd say, like school was really hard for my mom. And she really didn't have very much help with my grandma. My grandma only had a 6th grade education. So a lot of the stuff was over her head, and she didn't really understand or know how to help my mom. And her sister and her siblings were so much older that they had kind of moved on from that. They were kind of doing their own thing. So she felt like she was on her own with it. And so she often, even in my growing up, not intentionally to hurt me, and I'm not saying that she did anything to damage me or anything, but she would say that she was an idiot, or that she didn't that was an idiot thing to say, or she would put herself down in some way, or she'd say she looked ugly or whatever it is, and not all the time. And she didn't do that to me or anything like that. I don't even think she was conscious that she said it at different times and I heard it. And I'm not, again, blaming anything or, making it such a huge thing. However, it does make an impact. And it doesn't mean that you can never say a negative thing or that you have to be perfect. You just need to be honest. And I'm sure I said to my mom before, Mom, don't say that about yourself. And she was like, oh, I wasn't trying to whatever. And then we would have a conversation. But saying things like, I feel that too sometimes. And I remind myself that comparison doesn't tell the whole story. So if you are, trying to teach her how to just handle that and frame it in her mind, you can say that. Like, I feel that sometimes too on social media when I'm looking at this certain thing, or when I'm with my siblings, or whatever that would be. And then I remind myself that comparison doesn't tell the whole story. That normalizes the experience without reinforcing it. And if she's like, what does that even mean? You can say, well, you don't ever know everything that's going on with a person. So even though they may be really good at this one thing, they may have other challenges, because everybody does. And it doesn't mean that we're looking for the secret, hard thing about a person. But it's like, maybe that's the one area where they feel the most secure, and they, whatever. And so you can have a conversation about that. And so in all of my experience, I have watched girls come back from comparison, not because someone convinced them, but because they felt understood first. When the pressure lifts, the comparison loses its grip. And that doesn't mean that she's never going to compare again, but that's how confidence grows. Not by arguing the feelings away, but by staying grounded through them. So if comparison has been showing up lately with the girls in your life, please hear this. Your daughter isn't going down a path that she can't come back from. She's trying to understand herself in a world full of mirrors, especially when there's so much comparison in the world today for girls. And when you respond with curiosity instead of correction, you give her something comparison never can: a steady place to stand. I'll see you next time. Thanks for joining another empowering episode of the Raising Confident Girls podcast. Share today's insights with caregivers and friends, building beautiful relationships with strong girls. Hit subscribe so you never miss an episode. We're not just a podcast, we're a community. Follow Girls Positivity Club on social media for more empowering content on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube. This podcast empowers you, supporting incredible girls. Let's create strong, beautiful relationships with the girls in our lives. I appreciate you listening today. Stay confident, stay connected. Until next time, keep raising those confident girls. You've got this.